Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today I have the pleasure of having on our guest, Jeff Hardee. And Jeff is a researcher, practitioner, and academic. I came across his work through some videos on Qigong and Neigong, which I was fascinated by. And, during this conversation, it's going to be obvious as where I'm coming from and why I think we should be having this discussion. But welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the chance to talk to you all.
Yeah, and again, just from the outset, people might be seeing you or hearing you for the first time. So I said, here you're a researcher, practitioner, and academic. So let's just get a little bit into that. What do you research? What's your background? And then what do you practice?
Yeah. So really brief, and people can go to my website and get my whole academic CV. Essentially, I have a bachelor's degree in religious studies from Arizona State University, where I focused on mysticism and new religious movements. I also did a short stint at ASU Polytechnic in global technology and development for a master's program. Did all the courses, never finished the thesis, so I'm one of those. But my focus there was on, global technological development. That kind of movement from, first world to third world in terms of technology and what globalization is all about. And then had a short stint where I was just doing, the regular day job, but I decided to go, much more seriously into academics, and I started a doctoral program at Ubiquity University in their School of Science and Consciousness in their extraterrestrial studies program. Now, that's the first, as far as I know, program in the US which has a graduate program that is primarily focused on ET subjects or UAP subjects. And for myself, when I'm going into that, I like these large topics. I like these broad multidisciplinary topics, and I'm taking my consciousness studies interests into there for my dissertation. And essentially, my dissertation is the work I've been doing prior to joining that program, which is a participant observation study of three Western Neigong or Neidon groups. There's one group is called Authentic Neigong, another group is called Nei Chi Gong Fu, and another group is called Lotus Neigong International. All three are Western groups. They have Western teachers who learn from Eastern masters, but they're at the stage now where they can actually teach this Taoist inner alchemy knowledge to other Westerners, and therefore have crossed the cultural divide. So I still get to do my religious studies and mysticism as I'm focused on this. And so the question, of course, people ask me, my professors ask me, what does this have to do with ETs? And I tell them, well, look, in the teaching that is going on with Neigong and Daoist inner alchemy at the upper levels, there are plenty of stories of individuals who, once they are able to activate their upper danshin, that they begin to have Shen abilities, which include Psi abilities, but also things like communication with nature spirits, ancestors, ghosts, other non-human intelligences. And my hypothesis is you may be able to use that communication to speak with ETs.
Yeah, and again, I've mentioned it on this channel before, like about Qigong and Nigong or Neigong. Uh, for people who are like they're UFO researchers. They're going to say, what is Negung? What is Nidan? What is Qigong? How would you describe that for people?
Yeah, a very simplistic way is to think of it in levels, I guess. As a Westerner, we start thinking of this kind of hierarchy. But you can think of Qigong as the very beginner level, getting familiar with your body and moving, the quote unquote energy, the qi around in your body for health purposes. For just stretching your limbs and things like that. A very light form of Tai Chi in a way. Neigong is one step deeper, so you can call that, the intermediate level, where you're actually utilizing um, the chi in your body in order to collect that chi and to begin to understand the meridian system, the five element theory, and have a little deeper involvement with, your energetic body and compared with your physical body. Neidan, some people make a distinction between Neigong and Neidan. That Neidan is actually the Taoist Inner Alchemy, where you're converting the base level of qi that you have, which is called Jing, to a refined state, which is called Qi. And then you further convert that to another refined state, which is called Shen. Each of those are associated with the three danchins, the lower danchin, which is below your, below your navel, essentially. And then the middle danchin, which is around the center of your chest, you could say. And the upper danchin, which is basically between the eyebrows. All those are not physically on the surface of the skin. They're inside the body in what's called a central channel. But it's a much deeper process. It's a longer process, and the idea is that you're using it for longevity, right? Taoist goal of working with nature and extending your own life, but also with the alchemical process. It is said, and I have actually witnessed some portion of this, where you can collect the qi uh, such that you have enough qi for your own life to continue and all the things you need for the process of your life. But then you can collect extra. And that extra chi you can use for things like martial arts, spiritual development, or medical purposes. And the thing that I've most recently witnessed in the last several years is what's called fa chi, which is the emission of that bioelectrical energy by human beings outside of the body towards patients, which enhances their healing. And in my interviews, I talk about how it feels like, and we can get into that. But think of it as stages. So qigong is very light, kind of physical exercise. Neigong is getting into your energetic body and starting to collect and manipulate it. And then Neidan would be the actual alchemy process, where you're converting your energy to more subtle and subtle forms, getting much more control over it, and then able to essentially move on to grow and evolve as a human being to something more.
Yeah, and this is really fascinating stuff. I've been super interested in this stuff for a while now, and for relevance and people watching the channel, at least in my own experiences, is that I I had been practicing some of these things alongside, different systems, which I probably don't advise doing that as much. It's probably good to stick to one thing at a time at least. But I found myself dabbling like a lot of us do, right? We're seekers
Mhm.
and practitioners, and I felt a direct correlation and enhanced CE5 and contact work while practicing some of these practices of qigong and neigong. And there's other experiencers per se that are out in the field, and when they do like a contact retreat, they they do some of these practices during the retreat to prepare you for contact work.
Yeah.
And one of my suspicions, and this gets into some of my, I guess you can say, theories of interactivity, is that once you start working with, say, chi, right? See, chi, prana, all these different life forces, we can categorize them as subtle energies and, biofields. I, in my opinion, I think once you start dabbling in with subtle energy, and you begin to have an awareness for subtle energy, this kind of awareness is like somehow more directly related to UAP phenomenon, in the sense of once you're awakening your subtle awareness, you can more easily become aware of non-human intelligences, right? Whether it be like even just a UFO, like for what, and then there's also the idea that they take notice of you once you take notice of these realms for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I mean, the many whistleblowers and experiencers have said that they don't often hear the NHIs they are in contact with verbalizing. What they do hear often is telepathy. So therefore, once we're able to use those, you can call it psi abilities, then we're able to have that communication. But we were chatting a little bit before we started, and the question is, do you have to go through the whole, Taoist Inner Alchemy process, years and years of training, emphasis on your health, daily meditation in order to have these experiences? No, that's not what I'm saying. Because people have these experiences without going through Taoist Inner Alchemy. It's a very specific type of training for that to occur. Instead, what they're doing is they're using what I think is our natural human abilities. That Whitley Strieber, he wrote a book called The Fourth Mind recently, where he's talking about abilities that humankind has had, what he thinks have been lost, or that we just aren't in tune with. I think a lot of things that we're talking about, telepathy and whatnot, are things that humans can do naturally, but we just don't have a culture where we're practicing it as much, or it's acknowledged as much. But the difference, I guess, and we can get into this a little bit later, that I'm talking about, for if somebody who has cultivated through the Nadon process to be able to have that contact, I think we'll find out. I think that contact, when somebody who has actually cultivated, will be on a more level playing field. And what I mean by that is, if you listen to certain contactees or stories that people have, it seems to me mostly one way. The NHIs communicate with us, download information on us, and it's usually a one way. We can communicate back once they communicate with us, but it's a little unbalanced in my view. I'm very curious to see how an NHI would react to a person who truly has cultivated chi in the Nadon process, how they would react to that person. Because to me, that person has evolved more as a human being, and they have the ability to perhaps even um, stop some of the things that the NHIs do, like manipulate our perception without our permission, suppress our memory without our permission, things like that. I think that somebody who's able to do the alchemical process may have a little more of a defense. So I'm curious about that.
I think you're absolutely correct in that. And I'm going to say again, there's a difference in what I was saying about like, okay, you're dabbling in subtle energy and now you have an awareness to you've cultivated it and now you're yeah, again, like part of the conversation. You have more of a control. I don't want that's probably not the best word, but you have more of an influence in the interaction rather than just being aware of it, right? You're more participating in the interaction. I think you're probably correct about that.
Or can even initiate it, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Oh, 1,000,000%. And
I can tell you about uh, an experiment that I did in lucid dreaming a couple of years ago.
yeah,
So
please do. Yeah.
I've done lucid dreaming since I was a teenager from time to time. It's not something that, at least for myself, that I can do every night. That takes a lot of energy. But every now and then, I don't know, a couple times a month, I might be able to truly do it. I have a really good lucid dream. And so I decided to run an experiment where I wanted to try to lucid dream towards something I've never experienced before. So I just randomly chose a black cube. I've never dreamt of a black cube before. What would I do if I spent like a couple weeks just focusing on that as I'm falling asleep and trying to induce that dream and then be aware in that dream and go find this black cube? Long story short, after a couple of experiences of slowly getting closer and closer to that object and trying to stay aware, about it, I finally did see it. And where I saw it was, it's basically nighttime. I seem to be in um, I don't know if it was a construction site or some kind of rubble of buildings. And I saw, a little bit at a distance, several NHI, several essentially grays, I guess you could say, somewhat like the grays, but they had an attachment onto their necks, and they had a black cube in front of there where the slit of their mouths would be. And I knew instantly that's their translation device. That's how they can speak. And as part of my directive of my lucid dream, I wanted to go up there and examine that black cube, but I stumbled across the NHIs. And I've done this a couple times in lucid dreaming, where I don't intend to necessarily meet the NHIs, But when I do come across them, their response to me is a response of surprise, as in, what in the world is this human doing around our space or whatever, where we're at? We did not expect this human to be here. So it makes you wonder, is that just a dream? Is that just my projective, creative unconscious? Or is that an actual experience or not? So um, because they all turned towards me and they were interested in me being there, immediately I'm like, okay, I'm in a situation now. So I decided to hide a little bit by this rubble. And I thought, no, I have this intention. I need to go and look at this black cube. I need to accomplish this goal. So I decided, because they were shining lights in my direction. So I said, okay, I'm going to steel myself and I'm going to go forward and I'm going to actually finish my lucid dreaming task. And so I went back around the wall that I was behind, and I just steeled myself and I said, okay, I'll allow them to shine the light on me, but not to penetrate me and to know anything else. They can just shine the light on. And as I was starting to walk towards them, eventually I woke up. So that's what I mean by that was a little bit accidental, but I think that if I repeated that, that's more of like an intentional way in which you can encounter the NHIs if that was a real encounter. It's interesting what their reaction was.
Yeah, and there's a few like things that come to mind when you're talking about that. One is my first experiences ever with non-human intelligence. I was a very young kid and completely awake and aware. This happened over half dozen times in my childhood. Is I'd seen these entities in my room, and the first thing that happened, I had a telepathic lock on with them, but the first thing I ever heard was he can see us.
Mm,
And that kind of made me panic again because I was not in a dream, I was awake.
right.
But as to what you're saying, the lucid dream, you know, he who shall not be named, Dr. Stephen Greer, uh, once said in a lecture, and I think it's very true, is that a lot of ETs or non-human intelligence reach out to people in the lucid dream state most commonly, and I do think that there is something to that. And even if you think about Ingo Swann in the book Penetration, he's doing the remote viewing on the moon, and allegedly there's some non-human intelligences, and they are aware that he's there.
Hmm.
And just one more interesting story that correlates with that is there was a story told to Dr. Stephen Greer of this Rosicrucian was doing these Rosicrucian astral projection exercises,
Hmm.
and he was doing an astral projection exercise, and in the astral projection, he was going into the sky, and there was a UFO, and he instead of just going right through the UFO, he bumped into it
Hmm.
when he was going into it. So
Right.
he actually did go into it, but there was like a bump, and he asked, Stephen Greer's like, "Wow, how come there was this bump if I'm this astral thing?" And
Right.
again, Greer's explanation was that, well, you're materialized in the phase or dimension that they were in, so it was like this, rather than just going straight through it without any kind of inertia, you know, you were like on a similar dimensional wavelength or something. It just an interesting antidote.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but I do want to circle around a little bit uh, because I was fascinated by this to the what is it, the Fa Ki or the Fa Chi?
Fachi, yeah.
Yeah, that is something that's always fascinated me.
Right.
What was that like? And again, just to summarize that again for people, and what was that like? Like,
Yeah. So I want to make sure that people understand, at least in my experience, again, I'm doing this participant observation study. There are several claimants that say, especially over, when we have this internet age, that say that they can do this. But I'm talking about a very specific type of phenomenon, not the chi that you feel when you're doing qigong and you
right,
feel
right,
a
right,
little
right.
bit of air or warmth going along your body. I'm not talking about that at all. What I'm talking about is a something I've witnessed firsthand and something which I'm training myself to develop. Uh, and we can talk about that development process a little bit
I would love
later.
to, yeah.
Yeah, but it's so so briefly when I started to get into this, the first group that I began to study and train under was the group called Authentic Nagon. And the teacher there is an individual who is a TCM doctor and had gone to China and had studied under several other Chinese and Eastern masters in search of this kind of ability as well, and received training under several of them, and then found the one teacher that I've met, his master Zhou Gan Sheng, and has essentially learned under him, became his student. Has learned other masters. There was another master who unfortunately passed away. His name was Master Jiang Feng, and he also had a hospital in China where he used this as his modality. But what they represent is what I would consider to be the most refined, actual ability that we hear about in myth. And that is, again, this whole Nadon process, which requires what's called developing of the cauldron, the lower Danchen has to be established first. It's not something you can do in a week. You can't do it in a year. You probably won't be able to do it. Usually, most masters that I talk about, it takes it varies, but 5 to 10 years possibly of really focusing on your health. Your internal organs must be very healthy. You need to open up your meridians throughout your body. Your diet has to be great. Your exercise has to be great. Your the things you consume mentally have to be good as well. You follow these practices. I do various meditations throughout the day, every day. I'm probably meditating between 2 and 3 hours a day. And then there are trips that he arranges with this master for around the world. And what that master does is he will do treatments for people that either have a health problem or are practitioners in this art. So what he does in his treatment is traditional Chinese medicine, or Chinese medicine without the government stamp on it. That's been around for much longer. But he'll use this as an adjunct to moxibustion and acupuncture and Tuina massage and all that. And essentially, through his training, and he's been training a lot longer than I have. He's been training since he was a boy. He has collected an excess amount of chi in his body, and he's reached that level of health in his body, which means that he can, through certain exercises and focus, he can move that chi through his body and outside of his body, either through his Laogong points in his hand or through his fingers. When he does that, it will, depending on what he wants to do, because he can modulate that electricity at will. When it comes into your body, it feels not like, did I feel something? Is it a little bit of heat? Is it a little bit of vibration? I'm not so sure. No, it's like sticking your finger in a electrical socket. It's like being touched by an electric eel. You will feel it. You will know. And my scientific background says that this is measurable. This is something I should be able to get instrumentation on. That's what I'm attempting to do with some of these trips I'm going on. I have another trip I'm going to go on in July to Malaysia. And this energy, when it comes into your body, it feels essentially like electricity. Now, to me, again, this is hypothesis. I think it's alternating current rather than direct current because of the vibration that happens and because of the way that which he can adjust the voltage based on how he emits the energy. But it flows into your body. So one of the things he does is he emits it out of his fingers of his hand, and he puts it into your fingers in order to open up the meridians of your hand, right? Um, it's similar to if you had an old hose that had dirt in it or something like that, and you wanted to clear out the hose. You One way to do that, unless you have a big stick with a brush on it and you're trying to brush out all the stuff, is you just pump a bunch of water in it, right? And you try to flush it through. Well, that's really what it feels like. He's generating the energy and it's going into each of your fingers. It literally feels like it's going into the tip of your finger and it's going into the center of your finger, and it feels like a very strong voltage electricity that will travel a certain distance based on how open your meridian is. If your meridians are closed, it's not going to travel that far. And if you're pushing a lot of water into a hose that is stuck somewhere, what do you think is going to happen? Pressure is going to build up and it hurts.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that pleasant, but it's necessary if you want to continue with this training. If the more open your meridians are, the easier it is. But at the beginning, we don't have, as Westerners, open meridians. So it feels like to me liquid electricity and a strong voltage, like a hose that is pushing into your meridians. Now that's one way in which I felt it. Now I felt it in a couple other ways, depending on what he's doing. For example, um, if he was moving down my legs as part of the treatment, we're laying down on the table the way that he does it, Master Joe does, and as part of the process, he'll move his Laogong points down my legs. In that case, it felt a little bit prickly. It still felt like electricity flowing out of the palm of his hands, but it felt a little bit prickly down my leg meridians. And then another way I felt it is he had his hands sort of together and he was moving around my lower danshin to help establish and form the danshin and to even test whether or not somebody has collected chi. That's fascinating. I'll have to find a video and show you. But when he was doing that, just whatever he was doing, that it almost felt like it was wet. It was slick. It was like a shield, like he had some kind of a shield around his hand and he was scanning. That's what it felt like. Now, for the test for the lower danshan, he was also pushing chi down, with his fingers. And what's interesting is if you have collected some chi, which means you've established the lower danshan, which is not an easy thing to do, and you've collected a little bit of chi in there, then it's not just electric, it's magnetic. So when he pushes chi down, and I have a video of this, a clip we can try to find, that when he pushes down on one side, because it's magnetic in some way, the chi that you've collected moves away. And you can see physically under the skin, a portion of your body moves away from where he's pushing the electricity in. And that's an indicator that you've collected some chi. So when he first, because I had done some training prior to meeting him in October 2023 in Sweden, he pushed a little bit of electricity and he's like, "Oh, you got a little chi." And my teacher, Rudy, he looked over and he's like, "Oh, wow, you actually do have just a smidge, very small particle of chi." And I'm like, "Awesome, I'll keep training."
Yeah.
So part of this is as a practitioner is that you do want to be tested to make sure you're doing all the practices right, that you're not causing deviations in your body and things like that. But um, it is an extremely palpable experience. Again, he can modulate this. It can be softer. It can be harder. You'll see in some of the videos, if you look at another group that I'm training under is Nei Chi Gong Fu from Italy. Same master, Master Jogan Chang, but also Nei Chi Gong Fu. They also have studied under Master Lo Kan Chi as well. So there's Italian master there. He's Master Cosentino Valente. He's learned from both of those, and he's created his own system based on that. There's classes that are taught by his student Gioshi Andrea Castro Giovanni. So, and then since it's the same teacher, I've experienced the same kind of experience with him, since most of my experience has been with Master Joe. But then there's Lotus Negong International, which has actually been around quite a bit, has quite a big following. Damo Micho is the head of that, and they've been running these structured foundations classes since last year. And so I decided to also, go through that and see what the difference is between their teaching. They have a much broader teaching. They cover actually Qigong and Neigong and Neidan and Bagua and a whole bunch of other things in their system. So it's much broader. I have yet to experience what I would consider to be Fa Chi from anybody at Lotus Neigong International. It's not an emphasis of theirs, but I will have the chance to meet Damo Mitchell in June for a 10-day retreat as part of that program. Maybe he'll be amenable to doing that or not. You have to be, ask in the proper way in order to experience that. But so Fa Chi is a very specific phenomenon that I've only been able to experience from individuals who have spent many years in this cultivation for Taoist inner alchemy. And it's measurable, it's repeatable, um, it's trainable, and I think that it has quite a lot of actual consequences that the Western medical world needs to get on board with. I think it's something that could really help a lot of people in. It's not just for show, right? One of the main purposes is for healing, and there's some pretty amazing healings that happen with the use of this Fa Chi, along with other healing modalities.
Yeah, and just, I mean, super fascinating. This is gets to the question of human potential, and everybody watching this should know about Project Stargate and the different programs where the CIA and Army intelligence and every intelligence agency under the sun was secretly studying psi abilities.
Mhm. Still are.
Um, Still are, psychoenergetics comes to mind. How if you dig into the work that Hal Puthoff has been doing, and others. But I I don't want to go too much on a tangent with this, but I'm not sure if I've discussed. I don't know if I've discussed. I probably brought it up on the channel once or twice, but having you on a guest is the perfect time to bring it up. Uh, d can you tell the audience a little bit about the guy known as John Chang?
Oh
There's
yeah,
this incredible video on the internet. Like I'm skeptical of a lot of things,
yeah,
but that video I saw, when you in the early days of YouTube, and I was just like, this video is pretty impressive.
yeah.
I was very impressed by this gentleman, John Chang's demonstration. And still, I mean, I shared that video with Hal Puthoff, and he had an interesting reaction to it. But so what, yeah, can you just explain a little bit about John Chang?
Yeah. So John Chang probably has done the most, or at least the Blair brothers who
Yeah.
did the videos of him, who brought the world's attention to this Taoist inner alchemy. So he's also known as Dynamo Jack.
Yeah.
John Chang. Chang was not his real name. Unfortunately, he also passed away several years ago. His actual real last name is Baharudin, and he was considered to be the head of what some people may know is called Mopai.
Yeah.
He That was a very insular kind of teaching. A lot of this Taoist inner alchemy has been, tucked away in the Buddhist and Taoist temples and practices. It's something that has been probably a part of training for, you could say 1,000 years, or who knows. That's something that we need to research to find out exactly. It gets lost in time when it's all, student teacher, it's verbal, it's all, one-on-one. But we have, for example, The Secret of the Golden Flower, which
Yeah.
was published in two parts, I guess, in 1688 and 1692 CE. And that describes this alchemy process. There's other, diagrams that go through the process as well. But John Chang was highlighted in the Ring of Fire, an Indonesian Odyssey by Lawrence Blair, and it was released in 1988. And that's where I saw the first video, right? Everybody, I'm sure, has seen where John is lighting a newspaper on fire using his chi, which is Fa Chi. Now, as far as I know, I have no reason to doubt his ability that he actually was a lineage holder of this Nadon, that he was able to emit chi. There's other masters like Master Zhou and Master Zhang Feng can also do similar things as well. There's several videos that show them doing, um, using the chi in a way that we would say blurs the lines with telekinesis, with pyrokinesis, with electrokinesis. All those sort of work together with there's a video of Master Joe kind of blessing these, necklaces and wristbands and whatnot that people have who came to meet him, and he's pushing the chi onto them, and you can see smoke rising out of it. But he does the same thing on a person over their head, and you can see smoke rising from their head, and that's dampness, the damp chi escaping their body because the chi he's putting in is helping to heal them and to raise their ability level as well. So when that video came out, Ring of Fire, the most famous author Kostos Danaos wrote his book, and he talks about going and trying to find John, and he wrote the Magus of Java in 2000, and then then there's other people, Macmillan and whatnot, who
Yeah, yeah.
also learned from them, and what they did is they tried to get as far as they could. Whatever the levels are, I won't get into the debate of the levels.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right, and then they began to teach as well, and then there's a whole question of whether or not they John was allowed to teach Westerners or not, whether or not Mopai is something that still is a viable teaching modality for Westerners, or is it now only going to be taught to Easterners? That's that's a question for that lineage. The fact is that what they're practicing is Taoist Internal Alchemy,
Yeah.
and there are other masters, living masters, who do that as well. And it's all the same thing in at least my understanding right now. It's that process of um, getting your body to a certain stage, forming the lower danchin, collecting chi for yourself, collecting extra chi, learning how to move it around your body, then learn how to move it outside of your body. And that takes years to be able to do properly. Now, it's possible for a master to give you certain herbs to actually inject chi into your body, and then you would be able to emit chi immediately after. You're actually using like a borrowed chi. That is used as a gauge to see how a person's energetic system has advanced. But to me, that's not the indication that that person has reached level of independence. The ultimate level of independence is to be able to fachi on your own without assistance, without any kind of chi pills, without any kind of borrowing of chi from the master and whatnot. But that is a stage, right? Again, takes years to be able to do that. So essentially, what the Western world and why I argue that the beginning of the transition of this knowledge from closely held in the East to the West was Lawrence Blair's Ring of Fire and John Chang's decision to teach some Westerners. That opened the doors. So to me, Fachi in the West basically began to be taught in the 80s, in the 1980s, and through various other groups and through various other world events, right? Whether or not the Taoist and Buddhist temples were no longer being suppressed. The individual culture was interested in learning more about these ancient styles. Individuals who had left China to go to Indonesia and Malaysia and other places, and they formed clinics and they had students, martial students and healing practitioners. And then eventually it got to the stage of the groups that I'm studying right now, is where Westerners have actually reached the stage where they can actually um, they've reached a level of competency in Taoist inner alchemy. One of those stages, and I should be clear, it is not the ultimate goal. It is only a byproduct of the practice, is Fachi. It's just a byproduct, but it is a stage of development. These teachers are now able to do a similar thing and teach other Westerners. And then that to me is the interesting part because I study, new religious movements and whatnot, and cultural interchange and globalization and all that, that's going to change the teaching slightly. And maybe it'll have more things like logical minds and scientific processes and measurement and instrumentation and whatnot. Hopefully for the good, right? To help enhance Western medicine. That's one of the first goals, not only enhancing individuals, but to me, it opens up that idea that you talked about, where humans have more abilities than are normally discussed, and it's an inheritance of our humanness. And I think we have a right and a requirement to explore that ourselves, and to express that, and to one by one, individual by individual, advance the human race. I mean, you've heard of the Psi Games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
So
it's just a fascinating time to be alive. The Psi games, the telepathy tapes. You
yeah,
have groups like Skywatcher coming forward and very publicly talking about psionics and trying to utilize it for interactions with non-human intelligence. I
and it's
mean, like,
measurable.
yeah, and
It
like,
it's going to be studied and researched. Like I'm a competitor for the side games.
are
Uh,
you? Oh,
yeah.
that's so awesome.
So I signed up and I said I want to be pre-tested. So all the people who said, "Hey, I'd like to give it a shot," we have a certain period of time in which to do five. If we want to do all five of the categories, we have to go through that pre-testing. You have to do 15 rounds for every single thing, which takes a long time, but it helps you get a results that are above chance. And I'm assuming the top, however many, top 10 or whatever in each category, will then be invited to compete. And there's quite a lot of researchers and whatnot, and advisors who I'm sure will be collecting tons of data as this games are going. And the games are fun, and they're promoting a positive culture of psi abilities. So absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to. I hope I'm allowed to compete.
Me too. I want to see, right?
Yeah.
And uh, you know, very interesting. Like getting into the John Chang thing, uh, and kind of pulling this through is that you know in part of that video, one of the things he was doing was attempting or allegedly communicating with spirits
Right.
through right with that
Krishna.
object.
Mhm.
And again, this is getting into the aspect of when you're practicing the Taoist inner alchemy
Yeah.
on what's considered a higher level is communications with non-human intelligence. And it was interesting that the way that he described it, he's like expanding the yin field,
Right.
and that allows when he expands his yin field, he's creating basically an environment where non-human intelligence can interact with us.
Right.
And I no, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, sorry. I mean, you've heard in ghost hunting, for example, that when a sign of a ghost entering an environment is the temperature drops,
Yeah.
and that's because the entity, whatever discarnate consciousness, is absorbing the ambient temperature in order to manifest. So the yin field, that is what's part of the cultivation. The cultivation includes both yin and yang energy, but the yin field is needed to allow these non-visible semi-conscious or conscious beings to interact with us in our material physical world of Malkut, however you want to say it. It and his being able to work at that upper Danshin level, the Shin practices, allows him to have that telepathic communication. But you could see there's actually, some kind of telekinesis going on with the Chris knives moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna link that in the description so everybody can see it. I think everybody on this planet should see that. And again, one of the things that was impressive about that video to me was just it wasn't just like he was doing this like one trick, right? People can say, oh, he's doing tricks. The variety of different things he could do where it was just, I mean, it added context, I think, to the whole thing. And the way he was describing how he was doing each thing, he was describing what he was doing to create the effect.
Right.
Like he wasn't just like, oh, I'm using magic or whatever. He explains what he's doing with his yin and yang energy and how he's even, when the other people, right, they were touching his hand and they were like, ah, like they
Yeah.
felt the fa chi.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, that it's a side effect, right? I mean, if we think of it as Westerners or can maybe any human, right? Like, wow, I want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, right? It's like a fascinating thing, but I do want to get a little bit into what is the goal of these practices?
It depends on who you ask, right? Because remember, these are coming from religious, practice, religious, backgrounds. So if you ask a Buddhist person who trains in this, or you ask a Taoist who trains in this, they're going to be talking about things like erasing negative karma. They're going to be talking about trying to reach enlightenment. Not needing to reincarnate anymore. That ultimately it is a spiritual practice. It's meant to reach the heights of spirituality, and usually if it's Buddhist, for example, it's to benefit other suffering beings, and not take the final enlightenment, instead turn back and then teach and heal and whatnot other beings. So it depends on who you ask. I To me, I don't know what the ultimate goal is. I'm not willing to make guesses on ultimates. I mean, I don't personally, this is just me personally saying so. I don't think any group, any person, any book, any experience has ultimate truth figured out yet. I think that having a not necessarily a skeptical mind, but a mind of I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. I'm willing to do, um, you know, both science and religion together in a way to investigate and then to explore it and then be conscious and be, ethical as you're doing so. Let's find out. Let's find out together. It's why I like using the term scientific illuminism. It,
I was
um,
just
yeah,
I was just going to ask you what is scientific illuminism? Illuminism.
yeah, yeah. So scientific illuminism it's a term that's been around, but most likely most people have heard about it in terms of Aleister Crowley's Equinox publications. He was in a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the late 1800s. Very controversial member, and there was a lot of infighting with other members of the Golden Dawn. Crowley was a little bit of a part of that. There were still other reasons why the Golden Dawn sort of split apart. But then he formed a new, reformulation of that effort, which he called the AA. And as he published a lot. And so he published essentially this, multi-volume set that he called the Equinox. And, the banner of the Equinox would refer to something like the method of science, the aim of religion. And the idea was that, at his time, this is the early, 1900s, and he's in England, and he's thinking, well, let's look at all these things that we're learning about, spiritism and Madame Blavatsky, and yoga coming to the West, and learning about Buddhism and whatnot. Let's look at that in terms of the context of what are the goals of Christianity? What are the goals of Judaism? Um, can we achieve the goals that religion claims, but yet study it scientifically at the same time? Can we wear two hats and hopefully uh, document that journey and then allow that to become a body of knowledge that other human beings can then follow, so that we don't necessarily go too far in any one direction, right? Now, unfortunately, again, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this. I think that Crowley actually went a little bit too far in one direction once he started to adopt the mantle of the prophet of the new aeon for the Thelemic religion. Um, I think it's possible for people to look at some of his ideas in Thelema more philosophically or symbolically, and not necessarily be religious in that. But that's why I talk about the what I consider the original conception of scientific illuminism, which is really trying to make as equal as possible what you're trying to do as part of the scientific method towards religious goals in order to advance yourself as a human being to what? Who knows? But at least we know that we can advance, that there is a pathway that we could find out together, individually and then ultimately together towards that next step, that next stage of our evolution, which clearly human beings should be able to do. So
Yeah, and
that's where the history of scientific illuminism comes from. And there's a little bit other history, some other people before Crowley, but most people have heard about it from Aleister Crowley.
yeah, and to speak to that, and I'm going to link, your website and everything I can in the description so people can see for themselves. But you have proposed some ideas to do that with this chi, correct?
Correct. Yes. So I proposed a paper for the Society for Scientific Exploration for their 43rd annual conference, which is coming up later this year. Wherein the year before I did a presentation for them, and I'll try to get those slides up and set up my YouTube channel to be able to speak to those slides, where I was talking about what it is I'm doing and how I'm uh, tracking these groups and looking at the Fachi teaching moving to the West. But now I'm trying to see, can I use certain instrumentation to measure chi? I'm not the first. There's been many others who have tried to do so, but now we're in a stage where a lot of this instrumentation is more affordable and is portable. And if you can be culturally sensitive enough and respectful and ask these masters to see whether or not you can collect the data. And if you can't, that's their decision. Then work on yourself and develop the ability to be able to do it and then collect the data. That's one of the goals, that reason why I'm a practitioner, because I offer myself to the greater scientific community once, not only while I'm training now, because I am undergoing changes actually, um, that I'm measuring through certain instruments. But after I'm able to do the ability of Fachi, I would like other scientists to study it, and I'm willing to be, hooked up and be given those tasks to be able to get to the bottom of this, because I do believe that it is going to be useful not only for us personally, but seriously for Western medicine. I think that Western medicine does a great job for trauma and for certain other things. But when it comes to certain diseases, it fails miserably. It over relies on medication. But if we just introduced into Western medical practice the meridian system, the idea of chi, a little bit better pharmacology, then I think we'll heal a lot more people, and we'll have a better experience with the whole entire industry. But so some of those measurement methods that I want to try. So my paper is a proposal of different ways to measure. So I'm looking at things like um, get a tri-field meter. Instead of having a voltmeter where you have to have a ground, that was one of the problems that the researchers had when they went and researched John Chang. Let's just have a tri-field meter that is just looking at the ambient energy of the area. So look at both electrical, magnetic, and radio frequency. I have a radiation meter that can look to see if there's any kind of radiation. I don't think so, but we've got to measure it, right, to see if there's no results. Let's now we have really cheaper, EEG headbands.
Yeah.
I was recently talking to the head scientist of Muse about their new product, the Muse 2 Athena. And I'll be purchasing one of those and using that in my own tests. So as I do my own daily meditations, as I go and meet these masters, I want to utilize this headband and see what kind of brain changes are happening through that. It's not a direct measurement of the Fachi, but it is something that correlates with the action of emitting the energy, which gives us data. There's also things you can do to look at, muscular contraction. So the chi has to flow through your arm, right, in order to emit out of your palm. You can put sensors to look at muscular contractions. There are videos. A fellow student of mine has some great videos where he's showing some recent tests he's undergone. He's been able to visit the masters quite a lot, and he's developed very quickly, such that he now, with assistance, is able to Fa Chi himself. And you can actually see when the Chi is coming through his hand as part of a test, the arm locks out and the muscles lock out involuntarily. Well, that's again a correlative data point for the electricity coming in. There are other things that I think can be used that may be able to see, this energy itself, um, that that I'm proposing as a hypothesis. So two things I'll mention. It's going to be in my paper, so at least I get a little bit of credit for proposing these. So one is a millimeter wave scanner. I am quite confident that a millimeter wave scanner will be able to show if somebody has cultivated chi in their body. The reason why is because I know through reports and through myself that when you go through an airport security that use a millimeter wave scanner, I get flagged at my lower Danshan area where I'm collecting the chi. I don't have any hidden weapons or a belt or anything like
Mm.
that, but I can actually see on the millimeter wave scanner a mass that is showing up in their reader, and they asked me, "Have you had surgery recently?" And I get the pat down and whatnot. So I'm running my own experiment where just before I go into the airport, I will start doing some of my meditation to collect the chi. See if I get flagged,
Yeah.
I'll take the pat down and then go again and not do any meditation beforehand and see if I don't get a pat down and see if it makes a difference. So I know that some other practitioners have also gotten pat downs that are more cultivated than I am. So I'm pretty sure a millimeter wave scanner will actually show. And there's a story of John Chang, I think, that Costa Daenerys or Jim McMillan talk about uh, uh, John showing some X-rays and where doctors are showing a mass in his lower abdomen area. And then another thing I would like to try. I'm trying to figure out how to do this in a mobile way, and I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's Schlieren uh, photography. It's
Cerulean? Yeah, yeah. The
not not
cerulean.
not Cerulean, not
No, a
that.
different one.
It's Schleieren or Schleieren. It's a German technique where essentially it's used in order to view fluid dynamics
Okay.
um, through a splitting of light that happens in certain experimental setups, where you can like say you have a can of carbon dioxide. You can't see the carbon dioxide in the visible light, but the way in which this experiment is set up, because there's a wire on the receiver of the camera, and then there's a light shined on a certain type of mirror. It will actually split the light so that you can see carbon dioxide waving off of this container that you cannot see visually, but you could see in the camera. So you can do this with many other things, methane and other things, or you can see like the candle flame itself, but then you can see the heat that's radiating off the candle flame that you can't see visually. I'm pretty confident that if I'm able to get that next to a person in an experimental setup that's doing the Fa Chi, you will see the Fa Chi through the Schleierin or Schellerin, or I'm really murdering the name, photography, which has been around for a while.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of being able to get all these techniques together and try them out. Don't just say, "Oh, that could never exist. I'm not even going to study it." What kind of scientists are they, right?
Yeah.
Be an open mind, a curious mind. Let's find out. Testing it and not getting any data is awesome. It allows me to go in different directions and try to get other data. But because of the multiple times in which I've experienced it, and I now have a number of people I've been interviewing who also have experienced it. I know it's a fact. It's not a belief whatsoever. It just requires training. It's something that all humans beings should be able to do under those training conditions, the health and all that kind of stuff. And so, therefore, I'm excited to see if we can have that instrument to do it. one of the reasons for it, I kind of already mentioned, is, just to not just verification, but so that we can start transitioning over into using it in Western medicine. But also, unfortunately, it's the modern world, and we can get our message out and our advertising out. There are a number of frauds who claim that they're able to do this, and they're unfortunately definitely not. And they are fleecing people with pretty high uh, charges. And I'd like to help stop that. Either you have that established or you don't. You don't have to pretend to be something greater than you are. It's still useful. Certain things you can do without collecting this energy is still fantastic. It's still great for your health. But the very few people who are able to actually do this, and I'll be conservative, and I think, let's say, I'll be really conservative. I think less than 10,000 people on this planet can actually do Fachi at the level that Master Joe can. It's
Yeah.
probably far less than that.
Yeah.
So at least I want that for students who are trying to collect this to be able to verify it themselves with the measurement and to verify that the people who are teaching them are actually able to do it. I think we can do that through instrumentation.
Yeah, because and that's all fascinating, man. I would love to see, that come to fruition, measurements and validation of this because just based on different people I've met, stories I've heard, I think there's definitely something to it. And even the videos that you're included in on the ATS and which I'm going to include in the description, I mean, it's very fascinating and convincing, especially, you're giving testimony to it.
Yeah.
And, I've had a lot of like CE5 experiences. And so it's like for me, I have not experienced the Fachi. And
Mhm.
I would love to. I mean, that's to me because, I've had experiences with contact and interaction.
Mhm.
And so this is something to me where I'm like, man, like I need to experience that for myself at some point.
Yeah. Well,
And
once I'm able to do it, I will show you. But I can
yeah,
actually connect you with some of the groups that are doing these trips. They do them throughout the year. It's pretty expensive,
yeah,
but it's worth if it's your passion and it's something you want to experience. Before we have a number of people in the West who are able to do it, even at a small level. I can contact you, get you in contact with some of those groups.
yeah, because I've had all the John Chang books for years. Just it's just again fascinating to me. The thing I think about, the human potential aspect, I think is, I don't want to say it in like a thing like, oh, this is going to solve all our problems, right? But I think it's kind of part of our destiny to evolve into this and understand our potentials. And I think that's going to help us understand like the greater kind of universe. If we begin to have a better understanding of subtle energies and just the kind of like the world we live in and even who we are, what we're capable of. I think things like the interactions with non-human intelligence is a very natural human potential, right?
Right.
People have been doing it for thousands of years under different names, and
Possibly.
yeah, so all this is fascinating to me.
Yeah. In the program that I'm in with Ubiquity University, so far the main focus has been on late 1930s and forward.
Yeah,
So I could say with confidence that for the past, 90 or so years, there has been some kind of NHI presence on this planet with craft that have both been downed and given by the NHIs to us to study, reverse engineer, and who knows, what else their aims are. That's one of the problems I personally have is finding out what their intent is and how we can interact with them on an equal playing field and not be, experiencing the kind of things that certain people like Whitley, Strieber and other contactees. Even Chris Bledsoe. I'm actually taking a class with him right now. The last session is this Thursday. His experiences are amazing. They're fantastic. He has his own religious view of what's occurring. But if you read his book, UFO of God, many of his early experiences are not positive, and very much one way. And I personally, as you know, whatever I can do in those ET studies, um, moving on into that academic world, teaching or whatever else will come out of that, I would like to change that dynamic. I think it's something that as I mentioned to you, I think that humans should be able to demand respect and equality with the NHIs as we move on in our own evolution ourselves into the greater universe. And it's something we should, really think about in this interaction with the NHIs.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think that this cultivation of human potential is a part of that. It's a part of our, like, okay, we're not only becoming aware now, kind of collectively as a society of non-human intelligences, but where do we go from there? And again, this cultivation of human potential, I think, is an important factor in that. And I'm I just I mean, I've been lucky in my, I say lucky. Uh, I've had a lot of really positive experiences, and I don't know why that is.
Mm.
Um, but I do think this idea about the level playing field is an important one. And, Richard Dolan has talked a lot about like, okay, now we're developing very technologically fast, right? And we're kind of now stepping into their kind of domain in a sense of like, I don't want to say we're either like lesser or inferior or equal or I don't want to put things on a scale in that way to determine value based on intelligence or whatever capability in that way. But yeah, like we clearly they're very advanced, these non-human intelligences. And we're beginning to step into their world with technology, but maybe also these kind of psi potentials,
Right.
right? So I think it's important that we have these kind of conversations and like we have these things all set on the table. So, and I also don't want people to construe what you're saying as like, oh, wait, we have to be equal so we can defend ourselves. And like, just I don't want people to construe anything in that way. It's like, why wouldn't we or why shouldn't we? Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a little concerned about some of the things that I'm reading and I'm hearing from people. Um, if you look at the behavior that's reported of NHIs, um, and realize that not only abductions have happened, but human mutilation has happened as well. That fits the profile of cattle mutilation. There are certain researchers that have demonstrated some cases that are extremely compelling. The cuts look the same. The death is horrific. That's not to me from a species that has beneficial intent towards us. Reed Summers, I took a class with him early on at Ubiquity. He's doing a great job at asking these questions and at least trying to form a framework of how we can discuss it amongst ourselves. And eventually, once we do get that big D disclosure where it's more a day-to-day experience of meeting these NHIs, I do personally use the term both visitors and squatters. I'm, you have to ask yourself, why would a species from off planet be traveling in the airspace of the Earth with ships that are multiple, football fields large? My thinking is you must be moving a lot of personnel or equipment. Why are you doing that? What is your ultimate end game, whether or not they're in the ocean or in non, inhabitable parts, or even in dimensions that are near us, there's still an intent. There's still an actual presence that's detected. There's still physical effects that are happening, in the atmosphere and in people, and we should demand that, in my view, as human beings. We should demand clarity from whoever, multiple species or not. What are they doing? We need to know, and they need to um, work. There's that discussion of, well, they're so advanced and so incredibly intelligent. um I'm not so sure. I actually wonder sometimes if there are multiple species out there, if it's more like the wild wild west in the universe, where maybe some longer lived species developed the technology for the gravity drives first, died out or something, or were driven out. Who knows? It's all speculation. But basically, some other species that wasn't necessarily as developed as you would think. They didn't go through from the wheel all the way to a gravity drive themselves. They didn't go through that whole evolution technologically, and society, changes and whatnot. They were just given the technology. They somehow figured it out, or it would just work so well, and then they used that to go and do whatever their agenda is for other groups. You really have to ask, why would some of the craft that, I mean, there's so many government insiders that have said that we have craft. Why would that craft just be landed and then walked away from? At our level of development, you're going to hand that craft a loaded gun to, if you're so intelligent and so advanced, to what are children. That's not intelligence to me, to hand a loaded gun to a child and just see what happens. There's something else there. It's not as straightforward as we think, and I think that we do have rights, right, as human beings, and we can make demands on these encounters, and I'm hoping that we can do so in multiple ways, and perhaps as we develop these abilities in ourselves, we have um, more power to make these reasonable, intelligent demands, to be treated with
Absolutely.
respect. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, some people they only want to assign pure intent to non-human intelligences, and I mean, in a weird way, I understand why that is because it's like
Could be.
it's a hopeful thing.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, the truth is going to speak for itself. So I don't think in any ways by questioning or inquiring that we're victimizing non-human intelligence by asking these questions. That's something that gets conflated sometimes, is that like to have this kind of conversation, like we're trying it's like you're automatically trying to spin something into a fear narrative. Like we're asking the question. We're not making declarations or
Right.
you know, it's just a question, and
Yeah.
it has to be asked, right?
Yeah.
So, one of my things is like when it comes to like the tough questions, my perspective is let's ask them directly because there's no way that we're going to have disclosure, and the first questions that people are going to have are going to be some of these questions, right? You're not going to bypass that, right? So if you truly believe that the non-human intelligences are pure of intent, whatever, then like that's what we're gonna find. So then, there's nothing wrong with people asking these questions. I'm sorry if I'm overemphasizing that, but I know
No.
people have a knee-jerk reaction to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my approach is like, then let's find out whatever the answer is, because we're clearly not victimizing non-human intelligence by asking those questions, right?
Right.
And if people's idea that the intent is pure is true, that's what we're going to find out through asking the question. So
Yeah.
let's
Exactly.
so let's get to it, right? Like that's my approach to it, is like approach it directly.
Yeah. There
Like
was a I'm just looking here just so you know what I'm doing. There was a Soul Foundation meeting recently where there was an interview with Jim Simivan,
yeah, I know Jim. He's been
which
on.
was
He's yeah.
a great interview. And he asked the question, he was expressing the concern when we were asked about disclosure, big D, why isn't the US government, why are they dragging their feet or whatever the reason is? Um, he expressed the question, well, what do you say to an 8-year-old? How do you not scare the 8-year-olds? And my response was, that's an easy way to you have an easy I have an easy answer for that. The easy answer is you sit down with the 8-year-old and you say, look, we have new neighbors. They're not like us. We would like to meet them. They would like to meet us, but we're both nervous. Why don't we go ahead and meet each other? Let's learn about them. Let teach them about us, and let's be good, respectful neighbors. Because the only best choice, if they're going to stay, is to be good neighbors, right? That's the conversation with an 8-year-old. We don't have to stop the entire, um, you know, uh, not have that conversation simply because we're afraid that they would be afraid. We're the adults, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
we, for at least our species, right, we're able to think at an adult level. So there is a way in which to interact with somebody new who's not like you, who may have technology greater or whatever, or a different way of speaking or whatever. We do it all the time with cultures on the planet Earth, right? And with other species that we're interacting with. We're not, perfect at it, but we still make a good attempt. So, um, uh, again, I'm with you. I think that we should ask these questions, not assume positive intent, not assume negative intent, but find out, not just sit back and don't ask, not just sit back and make it secret, right? And allow whatever could be negative intent to continue or positive intent to do something that's still an intent that you don't know about or aren't even a part of, right? We're a part of this planet as much as they may or may not be. And we need to have that open dialogue with them.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good place to leave it for now. I mean, I can go on another 5 hours with you easy, man.
Sure.
It's really a great pleasure talking to you. I appreciate uh, the thinking that you're bringing to the table. I mean, I'd love to see you on some other UFO podcast for sure, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I'm
and
open. People can go to my website and contact me.
yeah, so yeah, people invite him on, man. I wanted to get into way more stuff, but there's so many different things to talk about. I would definitely love to have you back on sometime soon, because there's so many angles to go on. I think maybe next time we have a talk, we just start from the non-human intelligence thing and go from there because I mean I love the chi and the fa chi and the Nigong, and that's a passion of mine, and I have my own practices. But yeah, man, this has been great, and I'm gonna link all your stuff in the description. But just for people watching and listening, where can they find all your work?
Yeah, so pretty much I'm putting everything on my website. So that's weirdenergeticarts.com. Weird is spelled WYRD. And then my email is on there as well. I do have a new hypnotherapy practice. So if anybody is interested in being a client, they can always reach out to me as well. But I'm putting my research up there too, so that as I go through this doctoral program, I'll have some of my, pre-publication information there. I'm going to set up a Patreon, a YouTube channel. So just go to weirdenergeticarts.com and you can reach out to me.
Definitely, man. And it's been great talking, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Take care.